encounter with Giovanni's room, and then the start of this process for you guys.
Mine was a teenager. I think I've read it about 8 times over the course of, I've only not been a teenager for about 6 years. So, I'm in my 20s now. But as you get older, you read it again and again, and it means different things. So that was it was just something I would just return to every couple of years.
Yeah, I echo that. Rereading it every so often, it means different things every time you reread it. I discovered the book through an AOL chat room for gay men in Columbus, Ohio in 1996. Somebody recommended it to me. Here's more of the cast. Somebody recommended the book to me in some sort of conversation I was having in an AOL chat room, and I went to, I don't know if I bought it or I went to the library or something like that.
What's a library?
Yeah. That's a library. But I got the book, and as somebody who was studying acting, who was in a conservatory program at the time, I fell in love with the dialogue instantly. And I wanted to... And I wanted to play every character. The dialogue was so delicious as an actor, as a young actor, that I wanted to play Hella for sure, right? I wanted to play Giovanni. I identified with David at the time. Jacques was amazing with all this knowledge and this wisdom that comes flying out of his mouth. I wanted to play every character, and so I was obsessed from 1996 until now.
I don't mean to put everyone on the spot, but show of hands, who had read the book before you joined the rehearsal process?
Rehearsal process.
Yeah.
Well, before you were cast, how about that? Because
Sure.
that's a different question. You know what I mean? Like once you get cast, you always go and read the thing, right? So anybody?
I think after the callback, I read it and I was like, I feel like I should.
It's over here.
I read it in college, my own dirty little.
Ethan, check, David.
At the heart of the novel is the David and Giovanni relationship, but the book is about so many things. It's a snapshot of a very specific time in queer history. It's also, it touches on feminism, American exceptionalism. How did you tackle all of these different themes in the rehearsal process? And were there more themes that you discovered as you worked on the piece?
I'd say in the rehearsal process, I had all of them, these geniuses to help me, so that made it easier. It's etched on all their faces. And I think James Baldwin did the rest of the work. All Ben and I have to leave this. Right, we're talking for James Baldwin. All these live this long and get older and go through horrible loss in our own lives. We each have lost a parent and disappointed our parents, I'm sure, at some point, and gotten older in the gay community as Jacques has. And so all we had to do was have more life experience. So then when we came to it at this age, we were able to see. We both traveled a lot too, and we see what Americans do in other countries. So we just have to, we just have to get up. We just have to live this long, What do you guys think about these other themes in the show besides surprise? They said so much tonight that they are muted.
I think that in the rehearsal process, the American exceptionalism really came to the forefront for me. We had definitely had lines and dialogue that was directly linked to the novel that was James Baldwin's Genius, and in the rehearsal process, because the moment that we're in right now politically and tariffs and all that other stuff, it's just like all these things kept coming to the front for us because the actors are also brilliant, and like an example like Hella at the end says something about like don't shout, you can shout it to the peasants out there, and I was like, oh, that's another example of an American being like these Southern French people, like, we don't like them. We're not like them. We're not of them, you know. And so I was like, oh, let's bring that out a little bit more, because it was already in the novel to begin with. And so through the rehearsal process, I felt that a lot more.
What is an American word that they're not happy really hitting tonight?
Yeah.
I thought was, but there are so many lines. Jacques has so many lines in the first scene that are so cutting to an American, and it's that like outside view that feels so like as an audience member still in the spotlight.
Yeah, Jacques too, like as an intergenerational, like older gay man to a younger closeted gay man, like just the wisdom that comes out of that character is so delicious and just so pointed and important, you know. So Jacques is my favorite.
John talks about this thing that Americans have. We have this freedom to find ourselves. We live in a culture where, oh, you're gonna go to college, oh, you're gonna do this, oh, you're gonna stay with mom and dad for a while, oh, you're still finding yourself. Many cultures don't have that luxury. By 13, you're working, by 10, you're working, you're busy. So his comment, having worked with business people all over the world, as he says, he's seen it all. So he talks about, apparently, you know, you keep finding yourself. I guess it's easy for you to get misplaced. He's saying something deep. It is a funny joke, but he's saying something deeper about the luxury we have to just take your time. You know, you can do. It's a great privilege that Baldwin talked about way back then.
I think another thing that came out that I had not focused on was the idea that Italian people were seen as like the lowest of all Europeans, and I feel like that's a very interesting kind of like key into how the whole panorama works in terms of Giovanni being low class and Italian and
An immigrant in Paris.
And
He's an other.
And there's a whole post-war thing.
Yeah. And then the view of an American onto that hierarchy that they're not a part of. Yeah. Ethan and Michael, I wondered if you would talk a little bit about establishing the relationship on stage, the work that went on in the rehearsal room around that.
Oh, hey, what's up? Yeah, I think it's something that we knew that we had to find it from the beginning, and I think that doesn't come right away. To a point, I think we found that even more and more as we went along. That wasn't something that was just like instantly born once we got to rehearsal. So I think over time, like getting to know these characters and to know just each other better as people helped us really tap into that. And we also had like an incredible intimacy coordinator for the show who has supported us through like all of these moments on stage. So it's really takes a village to build that. It's not just me and Michael. It's Paul's work. It's in the writing. It's our intimacy coordinator, and we're constantly getting closer and finding that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we were given so much space, and the text allows such depth of feeling that the relationship doesn't take on like one color. As you can see throughout the play, they love each other and then they want to kill each other. And I think that movement through things kind of allowed us a real deep connection to the space, to the material, to these people, so that you kind of leap right in and test all those waters, and I think that helps. You hit one surface and you go deeper, you take another surface and you keep going deeper and deeper until you find the real kind of Greek tragedy of this piece. It's a classical text. It really is, and that's what always struck out to me from the beginning of reading it.
And you can't fake this chemistry, so it's a director's dream that these two are really become friends. They hang out. It doesn't always happen that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People sometimes just clock in and do it, but you can't fake what they're doing. They become my brothers in the best way.
one last question for me, and then I'll turn it out to the audience. But as a fellow actor, I found it really interesting, especially for the folks that worked with the small cameras and the projections. Did you find it difficult to change your focus mid-performance like that? So, like, acting for the camera is different for acting for on the stage.
Once you acted for it, not once you wrote it.
Oh, is it for you?
I don't understand who's operating. But we talked about it, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, well, Shelby and I, you did that too. It's, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say besides the fact that on screen or on camera, you're supposed to just do very little. In a theater, you're supposed to fill the space. So a lot of what I anticipated, I don't, on purpose, I don't watch myself. Like, that person doesn't exist. But I try to really limit my movements because, you know, one big movement on camera is like, whoa. So it really kind of makes you hone in.
There's a moment when they do it to me that I catch me in the projection. It's really disconcerting. You're like, who is that?
I remember when we started working in that tech too, having to be like, what's my frame? Like, okay, here, great, perfect.
Yeah.
So everything else stays still, and then all the storytelling and picture differences are done with just this frame rather than this frame.
And hers is so far away
Yeah.
that she, you know, there's no way you're going to catch yourself. So you needed to know
Thank
your frame.
God.
But you needed to know your frame because even in tech, you couldn't glance real quick and see what it was.
Well, that was also trusting Patrick.
Who was not able to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta trust you. You gotta trust your camera.
Yeah, they do a great job.
You know, there's a future for you in DP.
Let me turn it out to our audience. If you've got a question about the show, please put a hand in the air, and I will call on you in sequence. Here on the end here.
Two-part question. One person doesn't have a voice here. How did Baldwin Escape give you permission to adapt the play? And why Philadelphia? Why you? Why after so many years? First question. And the next question is comparing the book to the play. Bella's character felt so much more alive here in the play. And so that was my favorite character in the adaptation of the play. And one of you had mentioned your favorite character was Jacques. I'm curious what the rest of the actors when you read the book, now the play, who are each of your favorite characters, except from the mention of Jacques? So two very different questions.
Okay, so the first question was about the estates.
Yeah, the adaptation and being allowed to, how did you get this permission?
Well, it's here at Quintessence because Paul had met Alex Burns, the artistic director, at some party that he snuck into, right, in New York City. Charles Bush's party.
Charles Bush's Christmas party. I was singing Sarah Iron Change at the top of my lungs in the kitchen. And Alex walked in and was like, "Are you going to go do Act 2 as well?" And I was. So, but I had written the play written by Phyllis 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
So I knew Alex. I had worked here.
And Alex is my cousin-in-law. He's my late husband. He's cousins with my late husband. And so he knew Paul and I had this property between us that we worked on this property, and he was like, I really want to read it. I'm really excited about this. Wow. He wanted to do it a couple of years ago, and then the pandemic happened, and so it was all sort of like put on the shelf and everything like that. He approached the estate. I had approached the estate a couple of times with my version before Paul came on board in 2017, and was always told, "You're so sweet. You have this interest, and we love that, and it's really cute. But
no.
You're not a playwright, so no." But when Alex approached the estate with both of us on board, with a theater that wanted to commit to doing it in Philadelphia, a reputable theater, Equity Theater, whatever, and we sent the script, they said yes. And then the second part of your question was
which characters were their favorites reading the book, and then right?
Yeah, in the adaptation, because I
And then in the
thought so much
adaptation.
more in this adaptation. It was a much more brought alive in this adaptation than yours.
Well, that has to do with theater. You know, when you're sitting on the beach reading a book, you can put it down, sip your margarita, take that call from your friend, go back and pick it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You are assaulted with the show, basically. You know, we trapped you in there. So, you know, perhaps it's partly that. But what did you guys
When I was cast as Guillaume, I read the book and he's dead from the beginning of the book.
I know.
So that was an unusual thing to go. I was fascinated how these amazing actors created these characters. I don't want to center on anyone specific, but Shelby's work is hella just so specific and truthful and human. She became my favorite character. So
Hella's your favorite.
yeah.
I'm going to be a little selfish to say Flaming Princess because in the novel, Flaming Princess is a smaller mention, and in the novel is a much older character, and has a sort of there is more of a sage wisdom. I've been there, I've done that from a much later part of life, but in the staging of it and putting it in human bodies, like I was able to take on a different dynamic than that, in that like the wise older character that kind of already existed in the stage version, and so to have a more direct look at David and like I can see you because I could have been you right now actively, rather than I could have been you 30 years ago or 40 years ago, is a much different dynamic and very fun to play.
This one in the second row.
Yeah, so mine's more of a comment, is I think the casting has been amazing. So, I mean, both of my husband and I are ex-Mormons, right? And David struck me as this conflicted, squeaky clean Mormon boy who went to Europe. It's like, but the acting and the casting of everybody just seemed. I haven't read the book. Now I feel guilty because I but it just felt like everybody was true. Like this is, everybody seemed real. It was a really good casting. So whatever you guys did, it was a great job.
Well, here in the front and then here.
Hi, you guys just did a beautiful job, and the dialogue that he's created is just pops off the page. It's a gift to you as adapters. What I was impressed with was your handling of the Joey story. And whose idea was it to come up and put him in that situation? Because he's such an important part of the story. It wasn't there, and I'm like, what's going to happen to Joey? Where's Joey? Where's Joey? Because it's such a big part of David.
What has made him who he is.
Yes, he discovers himself at that early part in his life, and he pushes it all away, and then when it's then reawakened in this situation, when he meets his second Joey, and he gets his second chance at something.
As often happens in life, the things you push away will come back and haunt you at the moment you're at your lowest. And he's just been verbally assaulted is maybe not the word, but verbally, Flaming Princess really came at him outside the American Express office and called him the F slur. So he's in that panic. Someone has actually called him the word. Then he runs into Sue, who was in his group of American expatriates finding themselves or whatever. And to get it out of the system, he does what he does to her.
Which I think he had a lot beautifully.
And then I think that's what made Joey come up. And he wasn't in the thing before. And I said, Ben, to me, Joey is where James Baldwin put himself in this novel.
Absolutely.
And I think that he is Joey, and I think what happened to Joey happened to him with some guy, and he left America because of the gay community and how they treated this shorter, darker skinned, funny looking in his point of view, black man, and he decided to go write this novel, and he's going to get that guy back. But he just there was probably so much bubbling up in him, and he had a commentary about what creates systems in our country where people get treated that way. Black people, women, immigrants. I'm considering Giovanni that in the auspices of this book. So, but anyway, back to Joey. Yeah, that was my idea. And Ben was like, "How are we going to get him in the thing?" I'm like, "Well, he could just crawl up out from under the bed." I did not have that thought through, but we figured it out.
Right, but it's also great how you aged him up. Like, you know, where are you now?
Well, that's where we then had the conversation about what it would be as writers.
Right.
As writers, and like, you know, that's where people would think, oh, you added that dialogue. But we were pretty careful
I think you pulled it
to
off
pull it from somewhere in the book
Yeah.
and just put it in Joey's mouth.
Yeah, exactly. All the description of what meant showers and beaches.
That's all there.
Yeah, exactly.
We just put it in
That is
his
my
mouth.
favorite scene.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Congratulations.
Rafi, how long are you behind the bed for?
Wait, should we tell that secret? Did you all know? Did you all have any idea? Like, You did see. Okay, of course they did.
Yeah,
The
that's
power of reveal.
Well, since some people can see, it's when Anna and who's with you, Patrick or Anthony, they pull the sheet over Ethan when he is performing upstage on the bed while Sue is doing her monologue. They hold the sheet up and he crawls out. So he has to sit under that bed and do all that. But it's not that long.
One more here in the front.
I just wondered what it was like for white actors to take on this story, this novel written by a black man who was Southern and gay, but he was putting himself into the future in another country, in another continent. And sometimes when we see black playwrights and black directors, they're directing black stories. But this is unique because this is essentially, in my opinion, a white story, a European story, a gay story. And James Baldwin decided to be gay, but not gay in the white way. What was that like for you all to say, wow, I'm discovering this book, this novel, this story, written by a black gay man in a racist country and talking about freedom and exploring that? Because maybe initially when you heard about it, you thought it was going to be a different story. Maybe crime or drugs, which it is, but with a black aesthetic, right? What we sometimes think of where it's criminal. And that's not what this is about at all. It's far more, it's not even racial. It's intra-racial because Italians are not full human beings, as Irish are not full human beings, and so they show up lower. But those people are not black. When I don't know if it's a question or comment, when I read this many years ago, the characters would be black because I was so starved for black characters. And it wasn't until I was a grown-ass man that I realized the characters were not black. And I had a whole different interpretation of it. So I guess my question is, what is it like for you as white actors to play in a theater piece written by a black man that has nothing to do with blackness?
Oh, I mean,
directly.
You know, I thought a lot about this in a sense, just because it is a question that every once in a while has kind of brushed up with when people approach us about the work and kind of how it's going.
Sure.
I mean, you just have the fact that James Baldwin is such an extraordinary writer.
Agreed.
In any sense of any time period of anything. And then B, like, who better to write about American exceptionalism, about class disparity, about otherness than this black man in the 1950s.
Yeah.
And, you know, the only reason I came onto this piece, obviously, is because it is a black creation. I would not have been interested at all in a white viewpoint of this novel. And I feel like everyone on the creative end, from the person who created the stage, to the lighting, to the co-writer, to the directing, to the source material, it's all black. It's a black art. And I feel personally so enthralled to just be part of that molding of that. And there is a lot in the book, in the play, about white exceptionalism.
That's right.
And, you know, that is a very real and stark thing. And again, who better to write that than James Baldwin at the time? And I just feel so happy to step onto the world that has been created by all these black artists to make it possible to build it.
Yeah, Katie was going to design things black.
Yes. And prosper at all.
I would also say that, like, not all, but most white authors write characters that are white by default, they're not really thinking about them actively. It's not an active choice to write a white character. They just write characters and they end up being white because that's what they know. And it takes the experience of a black man to see all that white bullshit and to make the active choice to write white characters purposefully in order to make a statement rather than just assuming, well, of course they're white because that's default and that is just
It was
not
intentional.
the
Yeah,
case.
it's definitely intentional.
Baldwin also said that he couldn't have tackled queerness and blackness in 1956 in the same novel. So he was like, he had written Go Tell It on the Mountain. This was his second novel, and he was like, I'm not going to tackle blackness in this.
Well, and you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
Well, Go
that's
Tell
it.
It on the Mountain has that hint right on the last 2 pages.
Sure.
That 14-year-old James, you know, that you feel like he's talking about the burgeoning sexuality. And the book's over, and that just, crushed me. And so he, you know, because when he first wrote this, the publisher said, no, and you're going to ruin your career. He told him to burn it, as we talk about burning things, burning books. And then he found, what was the name of the other one? Dial. And they said, okay, we'll do it. Yeah, I just think it was intentional. Like, I don't know if anybody caught this little Easter egg, but when Rafi's in the opening scene in Guillaume's bar, and he's just the guy over here sketching on his pad.
Yeah.
For me, that's James Baldwin.
Yeah, I saw that too. It looks like James Baldwin with the hair. in my
Observing
mind.
these people and thinking, I might write a book about them.
I googled what inspired Baldwin, his life in Paris when he would hang out at cafes.
That's right.
There's this beautiful young blonde man that he saw constantly. He was so beautiful and so handsome, and then he disappeared. They said, oh, he was guillotined, he killed somebody. And that never left him, and that was the beginning of Giovanni's story.
All of these people existed. I believe that.
And I just want to say you're Broadway bound.
From your lips to
That's
I'm gonna make it happen.
You're Broadway bound.
Folks, that's a lovely place for us to end it. Can we thank our cast one more time? So much for joining us this evening. We do invite you to check out our pop-up shop in our front